everybody. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good. Great. Good. You guys are alive. Good. How many of you know or have friends and family that ride motorcycles? Show of hands. That's a lot. Well, today I'm going to give you guys a quick lesson on the history of Harley-Davidson. It's a lot more than just hot steel and big, hairy biker guys.
Let's just call it the inspiration. 3 new Harleys under $12,000.
Okay.
Just unplug the whole thing.
Okay. Okay, so that was the commercial for all of the new 2015 motorcycles that they just came out with. The reason I showed that is because that specific commercial shows that there is still progression in the company, and there still will be progression in the company. Now, this all couldn't have happened without William S. Harley and Arthur Davidson. In 1901, William Harley, at the age 21, finished the first blueprint to fit an engine inside of a bicycle. And then in 1903, William and Arthur made available to the public the first motorcycle ever. Now, these bikes were nothing like you see today, obviously. They looked like regular bicycles with just big, fat engines in them. And they were chain-driven. And it was obviously the start of a very successful and large company. Motorcycles weren't always for recreational use. They started out as racers. You would find them on dirt racetracks most of the time. And they sort of had their own place as racers and not street bikes. And then in 1908, when Harley-Davidson came out with their line of V-Rods, the first motorcycle that was ever sold for uses other than racing was to the police department of Detroit, Michigan. They were used for emergency vehicle uses and so on. And then in 1909, they refined their first model bike, which is the V-Rod, which they gave to the police department of Detroit. The Model 5D V-Rod was their first bike that was refined, sold, made available to the public, but they didn't start selling them to the public in mass quantities just yet. When they produced this bike stayed alive throughout many years, many decades, and it is the oldest motorcycle today. And we're going to fast forward almost a decade to the 1920s, when World War I was going on. Harley-Davidson started selling their motorcycles to the U.S. Army in mass quantities so they can use them for mobile forces. That was when Harley-Davidson really blew up, because after the war, the U.S. Soldiers would come back with their motorcycles, and then they started just selling them out to the public. This was the first time that Harley-Davidson actually made its way to the public eye, and the U.S. Army actually gave back 20,000 motorcycles to the public. So this is what started the sale of Harley-Davidson motorcycles to the public in mass quantities. And still around this time, HD bikes were mainly racer bikes. People in the public, they had them, but people still used them as racers. And then as the years went on, we get closer to the 50s and the 60s, we started to see bikes for more recreational use, bikes that were more comfortable to ride, nicer to look at. And then towards the 70s and the 80s, Harley-Davidson started making models such as the Electra Glide, the Heritage Softail, and still the V-Rod, variations on the V-Rod. After that, since then, motorcycles have just continued to grow as its own subculture. Many people gather for rallies. If you have friends and families that ride, they gather and they go on trips for bike rallies and such. And it really is an interesting thing to see and be a part of, because you meet so many new people and you become part of a history that is over 100 years old now. So it's very interesting, and yeah, that's about it. So okay, so I briefly went over the history of Harley-Davidson motorcycles, and now I'm just gonna go around the room and ask you guys just a couple quick questions, like almost like a pop quiz, to see if you guys were paying attention. What was the first police department that Harley-Davidson released their motorcycles to for emergency vehicle use?
Detroit.
How many Harley-Davidson motorcycles were sold back to the public after World War I? Zach?
Was it 20,000?
Yes, correct. Last but not least, what is the oldest Harley-Davidson model today? Still around? Yes.
V-Rod?